Hey guys, and welcome back to a new video. In this video, we're learning about the image view. And we know that the image view is just a UI component which is used to display graphics on our applications. Graphics like images or icons. And we have also used it before, but we didn't really get deeper into the attributes or the manipulations that we can add or create with the image view. And in this video, we're going to learn how to do this. So let's start by dropping an image view from the palette. And once you drop the image view from the palette, Android Studio will ask you if you want to include sample data as an image to your image view or choose a predefined drawable within your application or within your project. And here I'm just going to choose the sample data or sample image. And here you can see that the sample data is added with the tools src attribute, and we know that any attribute that starts with tools is considered to only affecting the view at the design time and not the runtime. So if we run the application, the sample data here or the sample image here won't be present within our image view. So anyway, let's just delete this tools attribute and add our own image. So here I'm going to add a source to our image with the source or src attribute, and you can just add any image from your drawable. For example, I'm going to add drawable astro here, which is just an image of an astronaut coding in space. We've also seen before that we could also use the srcCompat attribute. So if you just change this src to srcCompat and from Android make it app, you can see that the srcCompat also displays the same source or the same image within our image view. So what's the difference between the src and the srcCompat? Well, the src is older than the srcCompat, and both are used to display images or the so-called raster images. So raster images, also called bitmap, which is just the type of images that you see nearly every day in your life. It's the type of images if you zoom enough into, you'd see a grid of pixels. Now, the main difference between src and srcCompat when it comes to vectors or icons that we used before and we created before with the vector asset. Now, src is only used to display raster images. So if you use the vector icons with your src attribute, it will display your vector icons as a raster image or as a bitmap image rather than a vector. However, when it comes to srcCompat, the srcCompat will make sure that your vector icons or your vector files or vector images will remain the same even on larger screens or larger devices without being pixelated. So it's always recommended to use the srcCompat rather than the src attribute. Now, before diving into the attributes of the image view, let's just constrain our image view to the start of the parent, to the end of the parent, to the top of the parent, and give it a fixed height around 250 dp. And for the width, I will make it 0 dp to match constraint. Now we have used the scale type attribute before. So what is this scale type attribute? Well, the scale type attribute is used to control how the image should be resized within the image view. And we have used before the center crop, which just crops the image and make it centered into the image view without affecting its aspect ratio or without affecting the synchronization happening with the width and the height. And see here we also have other values that the scale type accepts, like center, which just puts the image into the center with respect to its width and height. And we have fit X and Y, which just stretches the image without paying any attention to the aspect ratio. We also have fit start, which just moves the image to start of the boundaries of the image view. Similarly, we have fit end, and we have fit center, which just puts the image to the center of the image view. And lastly, we have matrix and center inside. So the matrix just shows a portion of the image, and the center inside works similarly to the fit center, so it just centers the image within your image view. Now let's move to the tint attribute. And the tint is just similar to the background tint that we used with the buttons. It's used to give a shade of color to our image or to our vector. If you apply a tint to a raster image or to a bitmap image or to an actual image, it will just fill the whole image. So it's recommended to use the tint with a vector icon. So if we just change from drawable astro to drawable IC, for example, Android, and see here it just changes the original color of the vector. So the original color of this vector, if you press Ctrl and left click, it is a black color. And here it just adds the color to the vector here. And it's always recommended if you are using app srcCompat that you use the app tint rather than the Android tint. Now the following attributes which I'm going to talk about are also applicable to other views, but I thought of talking about them here in this video because I think they are more relatable to image views and the images in general. So if you, for example, want to rotate your image, you could add an attribute called rotation. And we have also used this before with the layers in the helpers or the layout helpers video. And here all you have to do is just to specify a value of degrees. So around 180, you can see it just tilts 180 degrees, 120, 90 degrees, and it just pays respect to the center of the image. However, if you don't want your image to be rotated or transformed with respect to its center, you can change the center value of the image or the pivot value or the transform pivot value of the image with the transform pivot attribute. And here, instead of making the image to rotate with respect to its center, we'll make it rotate with respect to the pivot value that we are going to specify here. So let's just try around 120 dp. You can see it rotates, it just gets out of screen completely as it rotates with respect to 120 dp, somewhere around here. So this is going to be the new pivot value or the new center value for the image. And if we, for example, just reduce this value around 50 dp, the image is completely gone. Let me just increase it. You can see here is our image. You can also change the pivot according to the y-axis with transform pivot y around 250 dp. You can see here that some portions of the image out of the screen. So you can just play around with transform pivot x and y to have your desired value. Now the transform pivot x and y also affect the scale of the image. So if you, for example, want to increase the size or the width of this image twice, you could just simply make it 2f. You can see that the image is twice as wide as before. Similarly for the scale y to f, you can see it doubles the size of the image, and we cannot see the image because of the transform pivot, so we are just going to delete the transform, and here's our image just twice as big as before. Now suppose that you want to specify the transparency of a view or the opacity of a view. You could simply achieve this by using the alpha attribute, and here you can specify a float value between 0 and 1 to determine the transparency of a view. So for example, if I want to make this image view here 50% evident or 50% visible, you can provide 0.5 and you can see it's 50% visible. You can play around with other values to get your desired output. Now finally, as I said before, the rotation, alpha, scale x and y, transform pivot x and y are also applied to other views. So they are not only exclusive for the image view. And here I made a mistake for the scale x and y values. They should not be float values. They are float internally, but you cannot specify if the value is a float or not within the XML. Now let's move to creating our application with the image views. So what we're going to create is just a simple application. You can see here we have a chain of views underneath, and then we have a main view or a main image in the topmost portion of the screen. And what we're going to do is whenever we click on any of these images underneath, the source of that image is going to be applied to the main image, and then a filter is going to be applied to the image that we clicked on with some scale added to the actual image to notify the user that this image is currently selected. So I'll skip the part where I will create the layout because it's fairly a simple layout, and with all the knowledge that you have, you could easily create that layout. Just before moving, let me just show you the layout here. You can see they have these views here, or these image views here within a horizontal chain, and all of them are having an srcCompat attribute with a vector drawable file. And then we have this main image here, which doesn't have any image set to it, and we'll set the source of this image view programmatically. So let's just move to the main activity class. So first, what we want to do is whenever we click on any of these images, we want to set the source of the images to the main image and apply some filters and so on. So everything begins with a click listener to every view within a chain, or every image view within a chain. So we can simply just go here and say binding dot the name of the images. So as you can see here, I didn't give any of the images within a chain a meaningful ID. only the main image has a meaningful ID, so I can differentiate between it and the other views. So you could just simply say ImageView9.set on click listener and so on and so forth, but the functionality for all of this is going to be the same. So I would rather extract this into a separate function and add the onClick attribute to the image view here and refer to that function that we are creating. Setting the onClick attribute here like we used to do before without using the data binding is not very suggested, but we will just do it for the sake of learning again how we could call a function from the attributes. So let's just first go and create our function. So here I'm gonna call it private fun. Let me just increase the size. Private function is going to be called start processing. And here the function should take a view, because if you want to call this function from your onClick attribute, you have to pass a view. So here we are passing the view. Import the view class with Alt Enter. And here what we want to do is to first get the drawable or get the source from this image. So for this, I'll create a variable and call it drawable, and I'll save the drawable that I get from the image view in this variable. So you could simply just say view.getDrawable, but you can see we don't have a get drawable because this is the view. So before getting the drawable, we have to cast the view to an image view with as keyword. View as image view, put all of these within parentheses, then get the drawable with the get drawable function or the drawable property syntax. So once we get the drawable, we want to set this drawable to the image or the main image. So we can achieve this by calling the set drawable, set image drawable, and add the drawable to the image. We also have other functions that we could use to set the source of the image view. You can see here set image resource, which accepts a resource ID. So you could just simply say r.drawable. Any of the images or any of the drawable files that you have within your application. You also have set image bitmap, which sets a bitmap or a raster image to the image view. We also have set image icon, and lastly the set image drawable that we used in the previous line. So that's great. We set the source of the image that we clicked on to the main image view. Now we want to increase the scale or double the size of the image that we clicked on. And you can do this by just calling the view scale equal to 2f to double the scale or to double the size of the image view in the x-axis, as well as the y-axis. Scale y also equals 2f. Now finally, we want to apply a color filter to the image view that we clicked on. So we could simply do this with view.setColorFilter, and here we are going to apply a gray color to our image view. Next, you can leave it like that, or you can add a blend mode to determine how the color should be blended with the image. And you can do this by referring to the portrait class .mode, and here you have different modes that you can choose. In this case, I'm going to choose lighten mode. And finally, we'll just apply this function to every view on the chain here. Just call it here, copy and paste to other views. Now, the only thing that I forgot to mention is that any function that you want to call from your onClick attribute is supposed to be public rather than private. So just change this from private to make it public, and now it will be accessible to the onClick attribute here within your views. And you can see when it turns colorful, that means it's called and referenced somewhere. So now let's just run the application. And you can see here's our app. If you click on the image, it becomes the source of the main image. If you click on the other image, it becomes the source of the other image. Let's try with the other images. But now we have a problem because the color filter is also applied to the main image, and whenever we click on other images, the scale of the other images are still big. So we want to decrease the scale of the images that are not selected and clear the color filter from the main image view. So let's first start with the sample task. So I'm going to create a function here called private fun clear filters, and this function here is used to clear all the filters from the views. So instead of just saying binding.imageview.clearFilters and so on and so forth, we will iterate through the children of our view or children of our root parent, which is the constraint layout. So you could do this with a for loop. So we are going to say for view in binding.root. So root is considered to be the constraint layout, which is our parent, dot children. And here we are getting a sequence of views. What we want to do is to say view dot clear color filters. And the color filter here, or the clear color filter, is not a function of the view class. So we want again to cast the view as an image view, put it within parentheses, and then say clear color filters or clear color filter. Additionally, we want to decrease the scale of the image to make it as the normal size. And with this, just change the scale X to 1F as well as the scale Y to 1F. Now here we are saying that every view here within our layout is considered to be an image view. But what if we have some text view somewhere? At this point, the application will crash. So instead of doing this, we could simply say if the view is an image view. So we first check if this view is an instance of the image view, and at this point put all of this within the F block. And at this point you don't need the casting anymore, because Kotlin by default has something called smart casting. So if you checked for the type here, then you don't have to cast the view to an image view, because every view within the block of F here is considered to be an image view. Let's just delete the parentheses and now call this color filters before adding the filter, just right here. And now let's just run the application to check this out. You can see here, once we click on another image, the filter gets cleared from this image, and another image, on another image, on another image. It works pretty well. The last thing that we want to do is to not apply the image filter to the main image. Well, this is happening because both of these views or both of these image views are referring to the same drawable. So the same drawable, which is a reference type, is applied to both of these image views. So instead of this, we have to make a copy of the original drawable here and make that copy of the drawable as a source to the original image before applying any effects to the current drawable of our selected image. So let's do this. So here what we want to do is to create a new drawable, and you can do this by calling the constant state of the drawable, then calling new drawable, and then call mutate attribute upon all this chain. And finally, constant state might be null, so we have to add the question mark to check for nullability before applying or before calling the mutate function. Now if you want to learn more about the null safety in Kotlin and smart casting, make sure to watch the Kotlin for Beginners playlist in this channel as I walk you through the null safety and the smart casting that Kotlin provides. Anyway, so here we are getting the drawable as a copy, then we are setting that drawable to be a source or a drawable to the main image, and now the color filter will only be applied to the image or the drawable of the image that we clicked on, and it won't affect the original drawable here. So now if you run our application once again, you can see once we click on this face, it's only applied here, not applied to the main image. Again here, works perfectly well. So that was it for today's video. If you have any problems following along, or if you have any tips for me, make sure to leave them in the comments below. I will be more than glad to listen to them and read them and help you with your concerns. So I'll leave a link to the description below for the documentations for the image view if you want to learn more about it, if you want to get to know more about the attributes and other stuff about the image view. Make sure to read it whenever you get the chance to. So thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.